when you actually think about it for a quick moment, if there is someone who is fucked the most, whatever decision she makes in this case, it is probably this potential baby daddy or this guy that she's been talking to out of all of these people. Okay, don't get me wrong, like the mother is definitely going to be the most fucked because
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. He is also a man who may include skipping leg day to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to speak on desire, because for some reason on this episode, it's like desire got me fucked up a little bit, because I'm not going to be sounding like the more confident, sensible guy that I normally sound like, and it is a particularly interesting thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I do still intend on coming to conclusions that I believe are about as true as I believe them to be, but I'm not gonna lie, this episode has a bunch of desire, and it's all in like the weirdest ways and places that we've come to see as far as love, sex, and relationships is concerned. Now, of course, as usual, I will always speak on different topics and give my thoughts on it. And should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest I should have on the podcast, then the DMs are always open. The social media is in the description, rarely ever changes. But should you feel like that is too much work to do, you can always listen all the way till the end, because I always mention the social media there. But all in all, I do thank you very much for listening, and I do hope that you actually enjoy the episode and you listen all the way till the end, especially listening all the way till the end. But all in all, thank you so much for listening again. And before I can get into what it is that I wanted to talk about today, first off, I know that this is more on a light note, and it's not like anyone will really notice this up until I mention it, but considering that this is episode 696, and stuff is seemingly toppling over in some way, shape, or form in this episode, is it just me, or does 696 as a number look like the number 6 basically just did a front flip and we're seeing all of the scenes? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I just figured I'd bring that up because I figured it would be a nice quirky thing to look at. But anyways, all that said, I want to get into the topics for this episode, and I want to kick things off by discussing a dilemma. Now, for those of you all that have listened for quite a bit, you know that I love dilemmas, especially in the realm of love, sex, and relationships, because they're particularly interesting ways to try and just look at things critically from a different point of view and see if someone's life might be as hard as you think it is. And at the same time, it does make for very interesting discussions, because people are like, imagine if, and it's like you let your mind kind of run wild. Now, this particular dilemma ended up on someone's page on IG, a lady by the name of Njambi Fever, and it was a lady who decided to come through and ask for some advice. She is apparently a single mom co-parenting, and she wants to get another baby. Now, I want to read what exactly she said, then I can get into my thoughts on it, because I feel like this is one of those interesting situations that even when people were commenting about it online in other forums, it's like people seem to ignore one of the more glaring details that didn't seem as relevant, but I think does carry quite a bit of weight. So anyways, let me just get into what it is that this lady said. So she says, and I quote, "Hey Njambi, I want us to talk. Men and women, I need your brutal and honest opinions. I'm 32 and I have one baby. A boy who is 4, and I want to have baby number 2 next year, so I have to get pregnant this year. My child's father and I separated 2 years ago, but he's present, very present. He takes care of all his child's bills, and he stays with the boy every Friday to Sunday, or when I travel, which I do after 3 months, and then he'll take the boy. He'll take him to school and pick him up. I mean, he's a good dad, because believe me, I know men who co-parenting with is crazy. From my friends' experiences, of course. Now, I want to tell him, let's do it. Have another baby and keep co-parenting. Problem is, I am talking to someone else who is a good one too, but I don't see the father figure in him." End quote. Okay. particularly interesting situation here. And I don't know, like, I feel like just off the top of my head, this is a very, very fucked situation, for lack of a better word, just because I'm trying to think of how someone could juggle managing either one of these situations, and none of them looks like a good option. Like, this is a proper dilemma. Like, this is the kind of shit that I try to wrap my head around, Not some of the simpler things that people bring out there and there's like a straightforward answer. This one's a little bit more complicated. And I'm not gonna get into what different people said, just because I feel like most people were attacking the woman and saying that she's dumb and the baby daddy probably hates her and probably regrets having the kid with her, so why would he want another kid? Or, the fact that if she has it with this other dude, then she could end up being a single mother to 2 kids from 2 different baby daddies. Like, I feel like most people are kind of revolving around that and just busy telling her that, she's proof that women can be dumb and all. And while I can get all of those points and they are very valid, I noticed that there was something that seemingly everyone seemed to have forgotten or not really considered, and it's this potential guy's side of this. Like, when you actually think about it for a quick moment, if there is someone who is fucked the most, whatever decision she makes in this case, it is probably this potential baby daddy or this guy that she's been talking to out of all of these people. Okay, don't get me wrong, like, the mother is definitely going to be the most fucked because she can be left by both men. And that's perfectly, understandable, and it's a very straightforward thing. But I don't think people understand just how messed up it is for this guy that's actively pursuing her. Because think about it like this. Imagine this babe ends up having a kid by this guy, okay? So it's not her ex, and it's 2 kids by 2 different guys. And this guy is basically with her, and let's say they have some issues and he decides to bounce. He's going to have to be taking care of 2 kids if at any point he's supposed to spend time with any of those kids and not with a mother. Like, more or less as a part of him trying to take care of his kid, but not unless if he's going to be selfish about it and, antagonize the mother who is like, both kids are there, you can't just take one. Because it's not like most of these moms are gonna be like, if you're going to take 1 kid, then just take 1 kid. They'll usually say, if you're going to take 1 kid, then take all of them. So imagine being that guy. Then on the flip side, imagine your babe, the babe that you're actively pursuing, getting pregnant by her ex simply because she wants to have another kid, but she still wants to be with you. Like, do you know how fucking weird that shit is? Like, you would not only be at like the bottom tier of guys, but you basically will have to take on the fact that not only are you still choosing to be with this babe despite the fact that she has kids, and I know there's a bunch of social shame that comes with that, but you're also watching her change the situation from being a 1-0 down situation to a 2-0 down situation, and you can't do shit about it, especially considering that it's not even your seed. Like, can you see how wild that shit is? And of course, like, not unless if the dude is lacking in, all confidence, he'll most probably have to leave shorty. And, he'll have to go to the homies and just talk about how bad the character development was, blah, blah. He thought he had something with this babe. And then she decided to go and get another kid by the ex. And the only thing that could probably make this not happen is if this woman decides to commit paternity fraud and has the baby by the ex, makes this guy think that it's his kid, and then they're like, let's start a family, blah, blah, or let's complete the family, blah, blah. Of which even that is a fucked up situation. Not for the situation where it's like, imagine if he finds out that the baby isn't his. Like, it's just a fucked up situation in general, even though he doesn't find out. And you look at it, there's a pretty good chance that the ex is only there as a father figure and as a parent, but he doesn't care much for having kids with this babe. And honestly, like, he probably even considers it to be like one of his biggest mistakes, but dude owned up to it, he's being responsible. And this woman is looking and is thinking, you know what, instead of having just one, we should have had like 2, and I've been wanting to have 2. So how about we go ahead and do it? Like, it seems particularly wild that you would look at that and be like, you know what? Yeah, let's have another kid. Not unless if the guy isn't interested in marriage, but he wants to have kids, then he can consider that as a good option. But if that were the case, he'd probably have issues with this babe going to canoodle with another guy and possibly starting another relationship. So, in my opinion, like, I feel like everything here is fucked. The only thing that could probably save her situation is if the ex also wants to have more kids and isn't really interested in getting married and doesn't mind the arrangement as is. Then, in that case, of course, it can kind of work in her favor. But for the most part, I'd say that I don't really think having kids is this important. Not unless if you're going to marry the guy that you're currently with and have kids with him. I honestly don't see this being a good situation. But anyways, with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. And this one does definitely come from a guy's point of view, and it's actually on something that shouldn't be as hard or shouldn't seem as hard, and that is the act of trying to pull a babe. The act of courting a girl, trying to attract a mate. It's one of those things that guys talk about, and it's in some cases a massive challenge for some. In other cases, it's not even a challenge, but it is a point of interest for a lot of men, more so young ones. Now, recently, while I was on Reddit, I stumbled across a post where a young guy was talking about how a lot of his friends in relationships, especially in the early 20s, are people who seem to have no sense of self-respect. And he was talking about it in the sense that he felt as though courtship was almost like a humiliation ritual. It's actually what he ended up titling his post, where he was like, courting a girl can be a humiliation ritual. And the guy basically goes off and talks about how he sees some of his boys going ahead trying to hit on a babe, and these guys are shooting their shots for such a long time before the babe accepts. And it's like, fine, yes, they're in love, but this guy went and put in so much effort, which didn't really make sense. He didn't entirely see why that was the case or why that had to be the case. But when he was looking into it, he was finding out that apparently his dad was chasing his mom from like the first year of uni all the way till the fourth year before they actually got together. And, it did seem like a particularly interesting post. So I am going to read it, of course. Then, as usual, I will get into the comments and give my thoughts on it, because I feel like there's one way to look at it and there's another way to look at this entire thing, which may not be what some of y'all might expect. So the post reads, and I quote, "Most of my homies in relationships in our early 20s are people who I am afraid to say have no sense of self-respect. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it seems to work. The other day, I saw texts between my friend and his now girlfriend during their talking stage days. Bro had to endure being left on scene for days. He had to triple text, always texting first, one-word answers, all forms of subtle disrespect and begging, including being friend-zoned, and guess what? It works, unfortunately. Now she is deeply in love and they are happy together. Suddenly, it all made sense. Begging and over-communicating actually bagged some women. Even my own dad was telling me how he courted my mom from first year to fourth year so that he could get her. Meanwhile, operate by a fair but strict regime. You cancel a meetup twice, you go. You take hours to reply, gone. I initiate texting twice and you don't do it the third time, I cut you off. You don't reciprocate my efforts in some way or make it known you're interested, gone. No wonder I'm still single, but at least I have never begged to be loved. Eri nitafute pesa ninunue bas." End quote. Okay, particularly interesting post and very interesting sentiments. And I can totally get where he's coming from, especially with the whole, even back in the day. And yet, even when you're looking at it right now, there's some of your homies who are like in the early 20s, and it's like they're begging for it from babes. Like, you would probably think that in Big 26, you didn't have to do such a thing, but apparently that's what some people are doing. But anyways, let me get into the comments, then I can give my thoughts on it. So, the first comment says, and I quote, "Marriage is optional," end quote. Okay, so I honestly feel like what dude is saying is a bit of a stretch here, considering that the guy was talking about his friends in his early 20s. But considering that he did bring in his dad into this mix as well, I can get what dude is trying to say, which is you don't really have to go through all of that shit just to get a babe. Like, it's not like it's a must you get married, which is a very, very sensible thing to say. It's just that there's a ton of people that have marriage in their cards of life's journeys that they have to go through. So unfortunately, this is something that you will find yourself or you will find people around you doing. But with that said, on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "A girl that is into you makes it easy for you." End quote. Okay, now if I was to summarize this entire main topic into one statement, it would probably be this. But unfortunately, there's way more that I need to add in there, so it can't just be the one statement. So let me drop that one and move on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "This experience only exists because you take part in it. I've never had to experience this because I worked on myself and have high standards. If she doesn't share the same enthusiasm and desire, I just keep it pushing. There's millions of women and billions of women worldwide. Improve yourself and these issues stop existing. What y'all are doing is negotiating desire. Your quote-unquote worth is low, so your strategy is to haggle down the price. Focus on improving yourself so you don't have to." End quote. And these are sentiments that I would normally say that I completely side with, and I totally do side with it, don't get me wrong. Although I do feel like further down the episode, you'll kind of realize why I don't just side with these sentiments alone. But anyways, with that said, on to the next comment, and it says, and I quote, "I get you. Sometimes you're like, Kwani, don't they feel the effort? But I think maybe you don't click their boxes right, or they're not yet comfortable, etc, etc. Like, you can never know who's playing hard to get or who's making fun of your chat somewhere else. The thing is, people need to be more straightforward and avoid these mental tortures and time wastage. Go for the first date, second and third, whatever suits you both, and pull down that wall you've created around yourselves. But you guys just do whatever the hell you want." End quote. Okay, this guy is speaking, I guess, from a more ideal standpoint, where it's like, okay, I can understand why'd you have to do A, B, C, or D. I don't think he's entirely addressing it directly, but the guy does make a pretty good statement. You know, it's good if people were more straightforward, but when it comes to courtship and mate attraction and dating, I feel like people like toying around with desire a little bit here and there because it's fun. And I guess for some people it can make for a good story. Or that's the fantasy that they've probably had in their head for such a long time. So that one I can get to a certain degree. But anyways, with that said, I think I'm gonna drop the comments from there. And honestly, personally speaking, I feel like it's not worth it to be putting that kind of effort just to get a babe. And, you know, much as I feel like it's not worth it, I do agree that it's mostly just me and a couple of guys. And it's probably the most politically, or should I say socially correct thing to say. But the reality on the ground is that there is a ton of guys that are basically begging for it, and there's a bunch of them that are going to get. Like, you as a guy can be out there busy thinking, oh, you know, as men, we usually don't cave down like that. Oh, you know, we usually don't do such things. Like, those are things that we stopped doing eons ago. We don't beg for it. My G, the number of people out here that are begging for it is huge. And the thing is, it's a strategy. And while I may find that it's not a great strategy, it's a strategy that's worked for a bunch of guys. Like, I could talk about how, oh, you know, you can be suave and confident because I've done it and it's managed to get me, you know, some chances here and there, and, you know, it's managed to get me, you know, thus far. But I'm sure there's niggas out here that have been begging for it for eons and have probably, and sometimes even had more success than I have when it comes to women. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm the end-all be-all and I've bagged a shit ton of babes or anything. But there's guys out here who are actively begging from a ton of babes, or just from a bunch of babes, and they might actually end up getting from some, if not even all. And the thing is, it's a strategy that's working for them. So for me to come and be like, oh, this is bad and you shouldn't be doing it. As a man, you're supposed to do A, B, C, and D. Like that would be dumb. Honestly speaking, that would be dumb. And I'm not saying that, the whole idea of thinking about dating the way I think about it is dumb. It's just for some people, it works. And the truth of it is, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of guys that will come out here and say, oh, if you're suave and you're confident and you work out and you dress well and you do A and you do B and you improve your personality and you do C, then you'll bag a babe. But there's guys that probably won't even try that, or they'll listen to you and they're like, yes, this is definitely something that we should do. And then they'll go back to begging for it because begging for it has been working. Because the truth of it is, the ability to beg has actually managed to get some people a lot further than their confidence probably would. I kid you the absolute hell not. There's something about the ability to beg for some people where, when paired with persistence, has managed to get them ahead. And it is a sucky thing when I think about it, because it feels like you're demeaning yourself and maybe you have a lack of confidence. But for those guys who might be doing way better than I am, it's fucking worked. So I really can't say anything bad about it. And the thing about it is, the ability to beg, by the way, actually doesn't know any status. It doesn't know levels of wealth. It does not know money. It doesn't even know recognition. There's people out here that are in the higher echelons, if not even the most elite echelons of society, who are still begging for it. Like, there's politicians out here who are begging for it. There's CEOs and corporate titans who are begging for it. And the truth of it is, because begging worked for them, it's something that they're going to continue doing. So I'm not going to say that it's a great strategy, but it has worked. And I think recognizing that it has worked does mean that it is a strategy of some sort, and it is a working strategy. It's just that I wouldn't recommend it as a good strategy. Mainly because I feel like when you do engage in that, there's a certain loss of respect and dignity, if I can call it that. And while I could go ahead and talk about all of these things that it could probably get you, I feel like that loss might be a little bit more for you as a person. Now, of course, for some people, it doesn't really matter all that much. For them, they're interested in the win, and the win is a win, regardless of whether it comes with an asterisk or you had to beg for it. At the end of the day, they wanted to win and they're willing to do whatever it took to get that win. And that is totally understandable. So as far as strategy goes, while I wouldn't say that it's the most recommended, it's definitely an option. So with that said, it's not like I'll tell you not to do it or to do it, but I will tell you that before you think to do it, at least try and calculate how much time and effort you're really putting in and whether that is really going to hurt you in the long run. Because, for example, if you're putting in a shit ton of time to get with a babe that isn't really going to give you that much value, then of course it does feel like you've wasted time on someone. If you are trying to get with a babe that you would like to wife because probably, let's say, she's pretty as fuck, and you're busy jumping through hoops for a straight year while there's a guy that could be getting it in a couple of days, you better be sure that being with her is going to mean so much more that even if people find out just how much begging you did, they're gonna be like, well, considering the babe, I can understand it. Or if her female friends hear about it, they're like, but he's such a great guy. Or they'll say that it's worth it. Because honestly, if you end up with the dignity loss and the confidence loss and it doesn't feel like it was worth it, I feel like now that's when you'll start being more resentful than ever. But anyways, with that said, let me just conclude by saying that when it comes down to it, begging for it sounds good. It actually does sound good in an R&B song. Nowhere else really, just begging for it sounds absolutely good in an R&B song, but that's it. Well, some people have done it and they have had success. I personally wouldn't recommend it because it does cost you respect and dignity in the process. And honestly, I feel like the trade-off for a lot of the people, or at least for a lot of the potential that you might have, isn't really worth it. But then again, it is always going to come down to you and whatever strategy you feel is going to work best in your favor. So choose wisely. And with that said, considering that I might be right or I might be wrong, Maybe I'm finally validating simping to some degree, but either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at bagakaded. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.